Right now, hundreds of millions of people are looking for love through a screen. They are swiping left and right on faces, reading short profiles, sending messages to strangers, arranging to meet people they have never seen in person. The global dating app industry is worth billions of dollars, and it is built entirely on a single assumption: that finding a partner is a problem of access, that the challenge is simply meeting enough people, and that technology can solve it by putting more faces in front of you faster. But here is something worth thinking about. For 300,000 years, humans found partners, formed bonds, raised children, and passed their genes down an unbroken chain all the way to you, without a single app, a single profile, or a single first date in any sense we would recognize. There were no restaurants to meet at, no phones to exchange numbers on, no way to browse hundreds of potential partners. And yet, the most important decision a human could make, the decision that would shape the rest of their life and determine whether their genes continued at all, somehow got made. Generation after generation. For longer than our species has existed in its current form. So how did they do it? How did ancient humans actually find a partner, choose one, form a lasting bond, and build a family in a world with none of the structures we now consider essential to the whole process? The answer turns out to be far more complex, far more strategic, and in some ways far more sophisticated than the swipe-based system that has replaced it. And understanding it reveals something genuinely surprising about what human attraction and partnership actually are underneath all the modern noise. Let's begin with the most fundamental fact, the one that changes everything else. Ancient humans were not choosing partners from a pool of strangers. They were choosing from people they had known, in many cases, their entire lives. This is almost the exact opposite of how modern dating works. The entire premise of a dating app is connecting you with people you do not know and would never otherwise meet. The entire reality of ancient partner selection was the reverse. You knew the candidates. You had grown up around them or around their families. You had watched them through childhood and adolescence. You knew their temperament, their skills, their reputation, their family, their standing in the group. The information that modern daters spend weeks or months trying to uncover about a potential partner, whether this person is kind, reliable, hardworking, honest, good with children, respected by others, was already known, often from years of direct observation. This single difference reshapes the entire process. In the modern world, attraction often comes first and information comes later. You are drawn to someone based on appearance, then gradually learn who they actually are. In the ancient world, the information frequently came first, accumulated over years, and the question of partnership was layered on top of a foundation of already knowing exactly who someone was. You were not taking a chance on a stranger. You were making a decision about a known quantity. But ancient groups were small, and this creates an immediate and serious problem. One that ancient humans solved in a way that turns out to be one of the most important and universal features of all human societies. If your group only contains 25 to 50 people, and many of them are your close relatives, the pool of potential partners within your own group is dangerously small. Choosing a partner from among your own close kin carries serious biological consequences. The risks of reproducing with close relatives were not understood scientifically by ancient humans, but the consequences would have been observed over generations. And so, across virtually every human society ever studied, a solution emerged that anthropologists consider one of the genuine universals of human culture: the incest taboo, a near-universal prohibition on partnering with close relatives. This taboo did something crucial. It forced partner selection outward, beyond the immediate group. And that outward push created one of the most important social structures in all of human prehistory: the exchange of partners between groups. When bands of humans encountered each other at shared water sources, during seasonal gatherings, at times of the year when multiple groups, came together where food was abundant. These meetings were not just social. They were the marriage market of the ancient world. They were where partnerships between groups were formed. A young person from one band might form a bond with a young person from another, and in doing so would create something far larger than a personal relationship. They would create a link between two entire groups. This is one of the most underappreciated facts about ancient human partnership. It was rarely just about two individuals. It was about alliances. When two people from different bands formed a bond, their two groups became connected. They became more likely to share food in times of scarcity, to come to each other's aid in times of danger, to grant each other access to territory and resources. In a world where survival often depended on having allies beyond your immediate group, these partnerships were a form of social and political infrastructure. They wove separate bands into wider networks of cooperation and mutual obligation that could span enormous distances. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer groups have documented exactly these kinds of networks. Among many groups, individuals maintain relationships through marriage and kinship with people across vast geographic areas. These networks function as a kind of insurance. If your local area suffers a drought or a failed season, you have relatives and allies elsewhere, connected to you through generations of partnerships, who may take you in or share their resources. The bonds formed between individuals were, in a very real sense, the threads that held together the entire fabric of human social survival. So partnerships served a function far beyond romance, but that raises an obvious question. Was there romance at all? Did ancient humans feel what we would recognize as love? Or was partnership purely a practical, strategic arrangement? The evidence, and there is real evidence on this, points strongly toward the conclusion that romantic love is not a modern invention. It is ancient, possibly as old as our species, and very likely older. Romantic love appears in every human culture that has ever been studied, not similar concepts of love. Romantic love, specifically, the intense, focused, sometimes overwhelming attraction and attachment to a particular individual. Anthropologists who surveyed a huge range of cultures across the world found evidence of romantic love in the overwhelming majority of them, including in small-scale societies with no contact with or influence from the modern Western idea of romance. This near-universal presence strongly suggests that romantic love is not a cultural product that some societies invented and spread. It is part of the standard equipment of the human mind, something that emerged through evolution because it served a purpose. And that purpose is not hard to identify. Remember what we have discussed in previous explorations of ancient human life. Human babies are born helpless, more helpless than the young of any other species, requiring years of intensive care before they can survive independently. Raising a human child to the point of self-sufficiency is an enormous undertaking, one that is extraordinarily difficult for a single person to manage, alone in a demanding environment. A pair bond, a strong, lasting attachment between two partners, dramatically increases the chances that a child will survive. Romantic love, the powerful force that draws two people together and holds them together, is, from an evolutionary perspective, the glue that helped keep parents committed to the shared, years-long project of raising a child who could not survive otherwise. This is why the feeling exists. Not as a luxury, not as a modern indulgence, but as one of the most important survival mechanisms our species ever developed. The intensity of romantic attraction, the way it can occupy a person's entire mind, the way it creates a powerful drive to be near one specific individual, all of this evolved because pairs who bonded strongly were more likely to raise children who survived to have children of their own. You feel the pull of love because your ancestors felt it, and because feeling it helped them succeed where others did not. So ancient humans felt love. But how did they signal it? How did attraction get communicated in a world without words exchanged over dinner, without messages, without any of the modern language of romance? The answer is that ancient humans had an entire toolkit of signals, many of which we still use today without realizing where they come from. Consider the things humans across all cultures do when they are attracted to someone. Sustained eye contact. Smiling. Subtle adjustments in posture and movement. Finding excuses to be near someone. Small acts of generosity and attention directed at a specific person. These behaviors are not learned from movies or magazines. They appear across cultures with striking consistency, which suggests they are deeply rooted, part of an ancient and largely universal language of human courtship that long predates any spoken word. Then there is provisioning. The giving of resources, particularly food, as a signal of interest and capability. Among many hunter-gatherer groups, a man bringing meat from a successful hunt to a particular woman or to her family was a clear and meaningful signal. It communicated something important. It said, "This person is a capable provider, someone who can help support a family, someone worth bonding with." This is not so different from much later human courtship customs across countless cultures, where the offering of gifts, the demonstration of one's ability to provide, has been a central feature. The specific gift changed across time and place, but the underlying signal, "I am capable, I am willing to invest in you," is ancient. Skill and competence were enormously attractive, and for good reason. In an environment where survival depended on practical abilities, a person who was an excellent hunter, a skilled toolmaker, a knowledgeable gatherer, a capable provider and protector was genuinely more valuable as a partner. These were not abstract status symbols. They were direct indicators of someone's ability to help a family survive and thrive. Attraction to competence, to demonstrate its skill, was attraction to the very qualities that would determine whether one's children lived or died. It makes complete sense that such qualities would be deeply appealing. But it was not only about practical skill. Other qualities mattered enormously too, and the evidence suggests they may have mattered just as much. Generosity, kindness, the willingness to share, reliability, a good temperament. In a small group where everyone depended on everyone else, a partner who was selfish, who hoarded resources, who was prone to conflict, who could not be relied upon, was a genuine liability. A partner who was generous, even-tempered, cooperative, and trustworthy was a genuine asset. These character traits were not just nice to have. They were observable over years of living in close proximity, and they were central to the question of who would make a good partner and a good parent. There is also the question of physical attraction, which modern people often assume was the primary driver, just as it frequently is in the swipe-based world of today. The evidence suggests physical attraction certainly mattered, but its role was more complex and more interesting than simple appearance. Many of the physical qualities humans find attractive across cultures turn out to be, at root, signals of health and vitality. Clear skin, bright eyes, strong hair, an energetic and capable body. In a world without medicine, without any way to treat serious illness, the visible signs of good health were genuinely important information about a potential partner. They indicated someone likely to survive, likely to be a capable provider or a healthy parent, likely to produce healthy children. What we experience as physical attraction is, in significant part, an ancient system for reading the health and vitality of others, a system that evolved because choosing a healthy partner had real consequences for survival and reproduction. But here is what is crucial and what often gets lost in modern discussions of attraction. In a small group where partnerships were also about character, skill, alliance, and years of accumulated knowledge about a person, physical attraction was one factor among many and rarely the deciding one on its own. A strikingly attractive person with a reputation for laziness, selfishness, or unreliability was not a desirable partner. A person of more ordinary appearance who was known to be skilled, generous, hard-working, and of good character was often far more sought after. The modern tendency to weight physical appearance so heavily driven in part by systems that present partners primarily as images to be judged on sight, is in many ways a distortion of how human partner selection worked for most of our history, when a person's appearance was only ever one piece of a much fuller picture that everyone already knew. This brings us to one of the most important questions of all. Who actually made the decision? In the modern world, at least in much of it, the choice of partner is considered an intensely personal one made by the two individuals involved. Was this true in the ancient world? The honest answer is that it was complicated and it varied enormously. In some societies, individual choice played a very significant role. Among certain hunter-gatherer groups, anthropologists have documented considerable freedom in partner selection, with individuals largely choosing their own partners based on mutual attraction and compatibility. In these groups, if a partnership was not working, separation was often relatively straightforward, and individuals could form new bonds. The idea that ancient partnership was always rigidly controlled and arranged is not supported by the full range of evidence. But in many societies, families played a substantial role. Because partnerships were about alliances between groups, because they had consequences far beyond the two individuals involved, the wider family often had a strong interest in who their members partnered with. Parents, elders, and extended kin frequently had significant influence over partner selection, sometimes guiding it, sometimes arranging it more directly. This was not necessarily experienced as oppressive in the way modern people might imagine. In a world where partnerships were understood to be about connecting families and ensuring survival, the involvement of the family in such an important decision was often seen as natural and appropriate. The reality, across the enormous diversity of ancient and traditional human societies, was almost certainly a spectrum. At one end, considerable individual freedom and choice based on personal attraction. At the other, substantial family involvement and arrangement based on alliance and practicality. And in between, every possible combination, with personal attraction and family interest both playing roles, negotiated and balanced in countless different ways across countless different cultures. There was never one single ancient system of finding a partner. There were thousands of variations on a set of shared underlying themes. Now, let's address something that often gets misunderstood about ancient partnership. The question of whether ancient humans were monogamous. This is a genuinely complicated question, and anyone who gives you a simple, confident answer is overstating what the evidence actually shows. The reality is that human beings appear to be what some researchers describe as flexibly monogamous or socially monogamous with variations. What this means is that the dominant pattern across most human societies has been the formation of pair bonds, two partners forming a lasting relationship and raising children together. But this pattern has always coexisted with significant variation. Some societies have practiced forms of partnership involving more than two people. Relationships have formed, dissolved, and reformed. The pattern is not rigid, lifelong monogamy in the strictest sense, but it is also clearly not a free-for-all without lasting bonds. The pair bond, the lasting attachment between partners, appears to be the central organizing feature of human reproductive life, across the vast majority of cultures and across what we can reconstruct of our deep history. This makes sense given everything we have discussed about the demands of raising helpless human children. But around that central feature, human partnership has always shown remarkable diversity and flexibility, shaped by environment, by available resources, by social structure, and by culture. Our species did not evolve one single rigid mating system. We evolved a flexible capacity for forming lasting bonds, expressed differently in different conditions. There is another dimension to ancient partnership that deserves attention, because it differs so sharply from the modern world. The role of the wider community in supporting and sustaining partnerships once they were formed. In the modern world, particularly in industrialized societies, a partnership is often expected to be largely self-sufficient. 2. People are expected to meet most of each other's needs, raise their children largely on their own, and sustain their relationship through their own individual effort, often while living far from extended family. This is, historically, an extraordinary expectation and an extraordinarily recent one. For most of human history, partnerships did not exist in isolation. They existed within a dense web of relationships, surrounded by extended family, by the wider group, by people who shared in the work of daily survival and the raising of children. A partnership was not two people against the world. It was two people embedded in a community that shared the load. The pressures that modern partnerships face, the expectation that one other person should meet all of one's needs for companionship, support, and assistance, would have been almost unrecognizable to ancient humans because no single relationship was ever expected to carry that entire weight. The community carried it together. This may be one of the most important and least discussed differences between ancient and modern partnership. The bond between two people was real, was important, was often loving, but it was held within a much larger structure of support. Ancient partners were not each other's entire world. They were partners within a world full of other relationships, all of which shared in the work of living. The modern experience of partnership as something that must be almost entirely self-contained is a profound departure from how humans formed and sustained bonds for the overwhelming majority of our existence. So what does all of this tell us in the end about how ancient humans found a partner before dating existed? It tells us, first, that the entire modern framing of the question is slightly wrong. Ancient humans were not searching for partners among strangers, trying to solve a problem of access. They were making decisions about people they already knew deeply, within a web of relationships and alliances that extended far beyond any two individuals. The challenge was not finding enough people. The challenge was navigating a complex set of considerations: personal attraction, character, skill, family interest, group alliance, all at once. It tells us, second, that romantic love is not a modern luxury or a cultural invention. It is ancient, it is universal, and it exists because it served one of the most important functions in all of human life, holding partners together through the demanding years of raising children who could not otherwise survive. The feeling you recognize as love is a direct inheritance from ancestors who felt it too, and who succeeded in raising the next generation partly because of it. It tells us, third, that the signals of attraction we use today, the eye contact, the smiling, the small acts of generosity and attention, the demonstrations of skill and capability, are not modern social customs. They are an ancient language, spoken by humans for longer than recorded history, rooted so deeply in who we are that we use them instinctively, without ever being taught. And it tells us, finally, something that might be the most important insight of all, that, for all the technology, all the apps, all the profiles and algorithms and endless faces to swipe through, the fundamental thing humans are looking for has not changed. A reliable partner, a person of good character, someone to build a life with, to share the work of survival with, to raise the next generation with. The methods have transformed almost beyond recognition. The underlying search has not changed at all. Ancient humans found that partner without a single piece of technology. They found them through years of shared life, through gatherings between groups, through the ancient language of attraction, through the powerful pull of a feeling that evolved precisely to bring two people together and keep them together. They found each other around fires and at water sources and at seasonal gatherings, in a world without words for dating, without any concept of a first date, without any of the structures we now consider essential. And every single one of them succeeded at least well enough for their line to continue, because you are here. Which means that somewhere back along an unbroken chain stretching across 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors found someone. Generation after generation, without fail, all the way down to you. That is not a small thing. That is the oldest love story in the world, and you are the latest chapter of it.